Hey, welcome back to Chapter 6, Grammatical Roles. So, as I mentioned in the introduction to Chapter 6, we are looking at 5 different verb phrase patterns. The verb is your anchor of the sentence. If you don't have a verb, you don't have a sentence in any language, right? And the verb will determine how all the other pieces fit together and what role is everything playing. Okay. And those grammatical roles, right, will be, the subject. That's the who or what your sentence is about. That's the thing doing the verb, right? Your direct objects and indirect objects are those a person or thing that's being acted on by the verb, right? And then the subject complement is going to be something, for instance, the be verb. We're saying the subject is this other thing. Object complements your sentence is saying that the object is this other thing. It's kind of an equation there. Subjects, objects, complements are all noun phrases. Person, place, or thing, right? So these are all noun phrases, but they're all performing different roles in the sentence. Okay? So we need to be clear when we identify or classify a certain phrase as a noun phrase, a verb phrase, adjective phrase, and so on. That's just identification, classification. Here we're looking at function. So we've identified noun phrases. Now, what are those noun phrases, right? And it can be any of these 5 things. Okay. And what the noun phrase is depends on the verb phrase, right? The main verb of the sentence is going to be the head of the verb phrase. That's your predicate, right? So we have these example sentences, and everything underlined is the predicate. The predicate will be a verb phrase. Obviously, it might be one single verb, as in the last example. It could be a very long verb phrase, as in the third example. It doesn't matter how short or long it is. It will be a verb phrase with a verb at the head. And that's your main verb, right? What the subject is doing. Okay. Verb phrase patterns that we're looking at will be intransitive, okay, transitive, ditransitive, subject complement, and object complement. So let's take a look at these 5. First thing that we'll look at is an intransitive verb pattern. What does that look like? Right? Intransitive verbs do not take direct objects, right? So a verb like laughed, we can throw in an adverb if we want. The pirates laughed heartily, right? But we cannot put a noun phrase after the verb laugh. We can't say the pirates laughed, laughed. I don't even know what to put, right? There's nothing you can put there, right? There's no object that we can put there. Okay. So we could have a sentence with just the verb by itself. The pirates laughed, period. Right? They laughed. I laughed. She laughed. Right? Period. There will be no direct object. Some common intransitive verbs, right? You have verbs like agree, walk, appear. A lot of bodily functions besides laughing. You have snoring and yawning, and sneezing, coughing, right? Smiling, arrive, fall, rise, sit, stand, happen. Okay. These are very common verbs that do not take direct objects. So you'll see a noun phrase as the subject and a verb or verb phrase as the predicate. And we could have, all of these verbs could exist in a verb phrase by themselves alone and don't need anything else, right? Unfortunately, he died. period. Right? I don't need anything else in that verb phrase. Right? Last night I slept. Period. And I don't need, what happened? Question mark. I don't need anything else in that verb phrase. I could just have that verb by itself. It doesn't need an object. Okay? Other intransitive verbs, try to think of as many as you possibly can, right? What verbs are out there that we can just say by themselves, right? It disappeared, period, right? And they don't need anything else going on with it. That's intransitive, okay? Transitive verbs will take a direct object, and some verbs require a direct object, right? We need something to go with that verb, okay? So if I use the verb found instead of laughed, I need something after that verb. The verb to find cannot exist on its own. It would be extremely odd for someone to walk into a room and say, hey guys, I found, period. Like, you found what? There needs to be a direct object. Something has to come after that verb find, right? The pirates found the treasure. They found a way through the forest. They found the clue, the map, whatever it is, right? I found my keys, right? Where's my phone? Okay, I found my phone. I found it, right? But you need something following that verb found, okay? That's transitive verbs. They take a direct object, okay? So common transitive verbs, right? Bring, buy, play, send, push, hit, teach, learn, okay? Again, some verbs require the direct object. So the verb buy, again, it'd be very, very bizarre for someone to just say like, oh, I bought. I went to the mall this weekend and I bought. You can't use the word buy without a direct object. You bought what, right? I need to say I bought something. I bought it. I bought some, right? I bought a lot of stuff, right? I bought some things, but you need to put something, you need a noun phrase after that verb. That noun phrase will be a direct object. So the transitive verb pattern will, be subject, verb, direct object. You have a noun phrase on either side of the verb, okay? Can you think of any other transitive verbs? Again, try to think of verbs that would sound really bizarre and just wrong if you used the verb by itself, right? You need to put something after that verb. As soon as that verb comes out of your mouth, there needs to be a noun phrase that follows it, okay? So I can sneeze, right? All right, I can just say I sneezed, I coughed, that's found, that's fine, right? But I get or I got, I feel like I need to get something or I got something, okay? Now, keep in mind that some verbs can be both transitive and intransitive, some only one. So some on the list you just saw, you might have said, hey, wait a minute, I can say it with or without a direct object. That would be a verb like read, right? To read can be intransitive. I can say I read all afternoon. There's no direct object. I don't say what I read. I'm just reading, right? What are you doing right now? I'm reading. So I don't need a direct object, but the verb read can take a direct object. I read an interesting article online. We can read magazines, we can read books, we can read the sticky note. Okay, we can read things. Okay, what are you reading? Oh, I'm reading something right now. It's very interesting. So a lot of verbs out there can be both transitive and intransitive. Some verbs, though, like the verb buy that we already talked about, buy is only, right? Only transitive, okay? So to buy, if I just said we bought, if there was no direct object after that, that's ungrammatical. It's wrong. I need to say what I bought. We bought a new mattress. So verbs like buy require a direct object. Okay. And then we have verbs like rise, which are only intransitive. They cannot take a direct object. So I can say the sun rises, period, right? The sun rises at 6:24. Again, that's not a direct object. That's a prepositional phrases. I'm telling you when the sun rises, but the sun rises, okay, period. The sun rises, the sky, I can say the sun rises in the sky. That would be a prepositional phrase, not a direct object, right? But I can't say the sun rises the sky or the sun rises anything. I can't rise something. I can raise my hand. I can raise something, but I cannot rise something. So rise would be an example of a verb that's only intransitive. So keep that in mind going forward. And whenever you encounter a verb and we're doing these exercises, think to yourself, is this verb intransitive only, transitive only, or can it take on both roles? Okay. Now, for subject complement, we've got a different kind of relationship. Here, we have what's called a linking verb. Sometimes you'll see it referred to as a copular verb or copula. And this verb is linking the subject, which is a noun phrase. Remember, the subject is always a noun phrase. It's linking the subject to another noun phrase, and it's not doing the same as a transitive verb. The subject is not acting on that noun phrase. The subject is that noun phrase. The box is a present. So the verb to be, it's kind of like an equal sign in mathematics. 3 equals 3, 1 equals 1, right? There's no action going on here. The box just is a present. So we call that noun, that second noun phrase, a complement. It's not an object, right? It's a complement, and it's the subject complement because it's the same thing as the subject. To be, obviously, is the most common verb. Am, is, are, was, were, but there are other verbs that do the same thing. So in the first example, you see the be verb, but we have verbs like became, right? Become, became, remain, or stay, right? When we say you will stay a loser, you are a loser, you were a loser, you will be a loser, right? But not you guys. You guys are all winners, okay? That's why you're all of my students are winners, okay? But we can see here again the subject is a noun phrase. Then we have that verb, that linking verb, and then the subject complement is another noun phrase. And the two noun phrases are the same thing. You know, Jasmine is a student in this class. The student and Jasmine are the same thing. So they're a complement of each other. They complete each other. Now, you can probably guess that if that, going by what we just said about subject complements, what's an object complement? Okay, well, we have a direct object, and then we are equating that direct object with some other noun phrase, okay? So a verb like consider, if I consider someone my friend, that someone and my friend, that those two noun phrases are the same. Most people consider Jacobson a loyal friend. That object, Jacobson, well, he's my direct object. That's the person that people are considering. A loyal friend is a second noun phrase. And I'm saying Jacob is a loyal friend, right? If I can take those two noun phrases and link them with the be verb, then I know I've got an object complement. Who is the loyal friend? Not the people, Jacobson. Jacobson is the loyal friend. So That's my object, direct object, and my object complement. Some examples of nouns that do this, and if you think about it, there aren't going to be a million verbs like this, right? There are going to be a few verbs that are the most common verbs that kind of allow us to make this equation. Verbs like proclaim. So the university proclaimed Juneteenth a holiday. Juneteenth, proper noun in a noun phrase. A holiday is another noun phrase. Juneteenth is a holiday. So those two noun phrases are being equated. That's your object and object complement. You know, called her a nasty name, considered the lecture a complete disaster. All of those verbs, proclaim, call, consider, can be followed by two noun phrases, the direct object and the object complement. So we're going to see this pattern, right, of noun phrase as our subject, verb, and then two noun phrases following an object or direct object. A direct object and an object complement, sorry. Okay. See the next video on some rules on how we can identify, is this a transitive verb or is this a subject complement, object complement, is it a direct object or indirect object, and all of that stuff. We're going to be going into more detail breaking apart these sentences.